Ray, hi, welcome to the Scenic Route podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Ooh, I'm so excited. I'm already like, this is going to be so good.
I
Um,
know.
because as you'll know in a minute, Ray is a psychologist. So today you have like our working title for this episode is like a psychologist and a sociologist walk into a Zoom room.
Yeah.
So this is going to be good. So buckle up. But before we go into down that lane, Ray, please briefly like walk us through your story, like how you started, how you got today. What do people get when they work with you? Give us like the big moments.
Yeah. So I've been doing copywriting, content creation, and digital marketing for almost 16 years now. And when I started out as a freelance web developer and freelance writer. And I was doing that freelance to put myself through school. So I got a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's in professional clinical counseling, and another master's in criminology.
Ooh,
And
wow.
I yeah, and I was working at a mental hospital, a drug rehab center, community counseling facility, and I was on track to be a counselor in the prison system. That's kind of where I was headed when, while working at the mental hospital, I just completely burned out on the mental health world, all the bureaucracy, all the red tape that really prevented us from actually doing good and helping people in the way that they needed, as opposed to just, oh, this paper says that I can only do this. So I quit the mental health world. I left all the psychology stuff behind and I threw myself full time into my side hustle of freelance writing. And I just built my business up from there. And I have now grown from a solopreneur operation to having a full-blown agency. I recently,
Congratulations.
thank you, recently retired my husband. He now works with me full time. And, it took me a long time to kind of come to terms with leaving the psychology world. And I'm like, I got 3 degrees. I paid for all of that. Like,
I gotta
why?
see a return
Why?
on that.
Exactly. And it wasn't until I was actually mentioning my psych background on sales calls as a freelance writer when potential clients would just like perk up and they'd go, oh, I like that. I like that you have that experience. I like that you have that psych background. And I learned that actually that's a selling point. That's a really
Yeah, I mean that's where now
lucrative.
like you have to the branding person in the room like, Ray, this is a gold mine.
Exactly. But I
Like,
was so like bitter about my student
mm,
loans and like going through all this, education to not
yeah,
actually use it for the intended purpose. But now it all really works really
makes
well
sense.
together. And I can't imagine being a copywriter without at least some knowledge and understanding of psychology and human behavior, the
Mm-hmm.
way people make decisions, the emotional pull of decision making. It's so handy. And I know you
Mm-hmm.
understand this as a branding expert with a sociology background. Everything just dovetails
Yeah.
so nicely.
But it reminds me of like when after I graduated with my master's in sociology and I went on like the first like job interviews and stuff, I oh my God, the countless times I got a question of like, oh, okay, but this is like a branding or like a project manager position in like financial communication or brand communication. What are you doing here? And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
A, you invited me, but B, like, I mean, there's like only one discipline that actually looks like why people trust institutions, trust
Yes.
companies, trust brands, trust things that are not real, like money. Like who
Right.
and we gotta look at that. What is kind of
Yeah.
like that glue that keeps everything together? And I mean that's sociology and a lot of and that's and I mean it's very and then I kind of like got the question, oh, but why didn't you study psychology? And I'm like,
Mm.
yeah, I had some social psychology classes too, but it's just a different focus. Maybe
Yeah.
that would be cool for people to for listeners to understand. Like sociology is more looking at how people interact
Hmm.
in systems and societies, or deal with cultural beliefs like religion or systems like money. Why do we believe in nation? Like, why do nations work? Why do we
Right.
believe in arbitrary borders? Like all those kind of like things. Whereas social psychology more focuses on like, okay, well, how do I as a single individual behave in group settings, in class and family settings, and so on.
Yes, exactly. I think you nailed it. For me, sociology is the macro. It's the
Mm,
system. It's the larger organism of
mm,
different entities and bodies and minds
mm.
interacting with one another, either in order or in chaos. And then psychology is the micro level. It's what is the order and chaos going on in our individual minds, and
Yeah.
what influences are at play, thoughts, beliefs, emotions, relationships, but all within our own heads.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at sociology, you're talking about multiple heads, and sometimes those heads don't even have heads because they're brands. They're just
Yeah,
organizations
exactly.
or entities.
Or
Yeah,
countries. And it's just really interesting.
exactly.
And there's a lot of crossover, especially when we think about role definitions and conflicts we have with roles, whether that be with the different roles inside ourselves, or how
Mhm.
others see our roles, like how we should perform, how we don't perform. Like it has a lot of crossovers, and
Yeah.
I'm glad we kind of like cleared this up briefly. So to kind of like, hey, there's a lot of things where together we have
Right.
like the full
Exactly.
view. So this
And when
is
you
really
talk
cool.
about like we act differently in different situations. If I think about how I act with my husband when we're home and we're just kind of laughing or chit-chatting or,
Mm,
planning something, whatever it might be, I act very differently than if I'm in a room with my grandmother or my father. I
mm,
act very differently. I feel different because there's
mm-hmm.
a different dynamic between those people. And then when you think about that in the context of what we do professionally, brands take on a persona, they take on an archetype, and
Yeah.
that could be kind of that father figure, that big brother,
Yeah. Or
that
you're the
role
jester, the
model.
funny one, or the smart one, the
Right.
caring one.
Or it could be the lover, the romantic partner, the best friend who is more on your peer level.
Mm,
And depending on how you want people to respond to your brand, you need to take on the appropriate archetype. And so it's all very interconnected. And it's like this, it's kind of like if you go to a carnival fun house and you go into the hall of mirrors, it's like these layers upon layers where one dynamic between you and one other person is echoed into these bigger relationships between
yes.
entire groups and bigger organizations or companies.
Yes. Yes. I love this. And I think the key is, and that is, that might be, it's, it's a double-sided sword, right? Like if you're starting out, if you're solopreneur, that whole thing is kind of easier and harder at the same time, right? Because you're like, oh, sure, like it's easy. I'm just one. I know I'm like the rebel or the carer or whatever, the lover. But at the same time, it's not you, it's your brand. So what are you
Yes.
sharing? What are you not sharing? Um, how to navigate all of this. So I mean, that's like you could write an entire book about this. Really,
Right. And
really
that's where it
focus
gets
on that.
really, it gets so tricky, especially with social media nowadays, because
Mm,
we all kind of know what you see on Instagram is probably not that person's full reality. You're just getting the little
mm,
snippets of what they want you to see.
mm.
But as a solopreneur, as a self-employed business owner, in my opinion, it's much easier to create a brand that has longevity when that brand as closely as possible matches who you actually are.
Yeah.
And so, we can talk about being an individual person and then having your brand be something separate. But if you're a solopreneur, it gets exhausting if those two things are too far apart.
Yeah.
And so, if you are going to build a brand that is not draining, but actually energizes you and helps you build a better business and helps you get the clients that you actually really like and connect with and enjoy serving,
Mm.
your brand needs to be as close to who you are as possible without crossing into this is, there's no difference between my personal
Yeah.
life and my business life.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd even go a step further and say your brand's not going to be successful if you're pretending to be someone else, right? Like we
Yes,
have a very good
completely agree.
sensor for, ooh, something smells fishy. And A, and B, we have so many touch points these days where people can get to know you and interact with you. And if just on one of those touch points sits, say, an email or a landing page or an ad, or they heard you on a podcast or whatever, they get an impression you're someone completely different. People are confused.
Yeah.
And I mean, you as a psychologist, if you confuse them, you lose them. There's some truth in that. We're not just saying this.
Exactly.
So it's really interesting. And it's really true that it has to be as close to who you are. So it just comes more natural to you, more effortlessly, like, and so on. But here comes like the brand lens. It's kind of like adding another layer. It has to be a brand that you like, or a brand persona that has to be close to you, but it has to be seen as this persona by someone else.
Yep.
Right? If you see yourself as the caregiver by all the criteria you define for itself, and people look at it and be like, no, actually that's not giving me caregiver vibes,
right?
You're also going to confuse them. So that's where we're like, see, this is how we add a layer on top of a layer on top of a layer.
Right. And not to complicate matters further, but when you're doing business and when you're leveraging this in action, you have 3 layers. You have your brand. That's the outward persona, the outward image that you're portraying to the world. And it can be very static. Like it's a logo. It's a color palette. It's a font. That's your branding. And then there's your marketing. Marketing is more dynamic. It's more movement. It's where you are drawing the person from that first impression with your brand toward you. And then the ultimate goal is to get them to selling. So you have branding, marketing, and then selling. And at each of those stages, like you said, they're having multiple touch points with your brand, with your marketing, and then with your sales process. And so if at any point those things don't connect, if it doesn't all feel like the same entity, the same vibe, the same personality, you're going to lose them, because then they go, oh, I don't feel safe. I don't feel like what I was promised is what I'm getting. They bail.
There's not enough trust.
Yes. You lose their trust. Yep. Exactly.
And I mean, we can even make this even more complicated. I mean, we also have a time axis, right? Yes. So you have to do this over time.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, you sometimes have people who see you once and buy from you, and that's amazing. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the times we have longer lead times. I don't know, maybe it takes someone 6 months to decide if they want to work with you. So you have to put that up indefinitely. So, but I mean, I feel like we're adding layer on top, but you already touched upon what I want to center this conversation around, and that is actually what we do in business. Our core activity. We can spend all the time in copywriting and all the time in picking out nice brand colors, but we actually gotta sell.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's gonna be pretty hard to run business and stay a business. Yeah. So, I would really get some psychologists' insights on why, I feel like if we understand why our clients buy, we have it easier to tailor our copy, our marketing, our branding towards those little psychological insights that it's not a golden bullet, it's not a blueprint, but I feel there's certain knowledge bumps that are about to go off now.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I want to say is a lot of people who are in business for themselves, they got into business to do the thing that they love to do. And 99 times out of 100, that is not selling. They don't enjoy selling. A
Yes.
lot of creatives in particular look at selling like,
Oh yeah.
oh
I'm
God, do I
hearing
really
all
have to
my
do this?
past clients
Yep.
like, yes, you're an expert service provider. That's how you usually start, right? You do
Right.
something incredibly well, copywriting, taking photos, designing what it is. And then you start your business and be like, oh, I'm still good at that. Oh, but I need to learn other stuff too.
Yes. Yeah. And so one thing I didn't explain at the beginning when you were asking me, what I do and everything, over the past 4 years, I've been doing mentoring for other
Ah,
freelancers and creatives. And so within that context, a lot of the clients that I work with, they're very relieved when I tell them that they don't have to sell if they don't want to. And what I mean by that is if you can use your branding and your marketing to get your ideal client 80% of the way there, then
yeah,
your sales call should literally just be answering questions of how does this work and how much is it going to
yes.
cost? And that's it. That's all you have to do is be honest and explain what it's like to work with you. You don't have to persuade. You don't have to use scarcity tactics. You don't have to use any of these mental gymnastics. That's not the
We're
point.
not here for this, but here for letting your brand and marketing processes take more of the weight.
Exactly.
Mm,
Exactly. And if someone goes through that process and they have already made a decision, and maybe it's a quasi decision, maybe it's, I'm pretty sure I want to work with this person, but it kind of just depends on what the price is, or kind of depends on if they can do my website by
yes.
the
I
end
mean,
of the
if they're
year.
completely out of your budget, then maybe I'd say yes in like 6 months when I have the
Right.
funds.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And then in that selling process, all you have to do is be the solution provider. You have to figure out their problem and offer a solution if you're a good fit. And
Mm,
that's where these kind of psychological principles of selling get very simple because a lot of people think, okay, how do I convince? How do I sell myself? How do I persuade? You don't
mm.
have to do any of that. You just have to be a human. And that's what a lot of people are craving in the sales process.
Yeah.
Who listening to this has bought a car and you just feel like, oh, this salesman, he's just trying to get one over on me. He's trying to get me to buy all the bells and whistles, all the
Mm,
packages. You don't feel like it's a human to human interaction. You feel like it's a business to
mm,
human interaction. That's
mm.
not what people want.
Yeah.
So when I talk about the psychology of selling, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Giving people what they want, which
Mm,
is probably exactly what you want too. So putting
mm,
yourself in that person's shoes, you don't need 3 degrees in psychology and human behavior to understand what people actually want, how you would like to be treated.
mm. Yes, that's such a good point. And it really kind of boils down to play to your strengths, right?
Yes.
I mean, you'll never be able to compete for certain projects or work with, let's say, big agencies if you're in a creative space.
Mhm.
It's just not gonna happen. Big companies, I mean, I worked for like big global corporations. They'll not work, most cases, they're not gonna work with a single entrepreneur just because it's a liability issue. But
Sure.
I mean, play to your strengths, right? Like you're actually able to put human connection at the core of what you do. I mean,
Yes.
big companies try to kind of like try it with personalized email newsletters and be like, hey, we're actually doing super here. And you actually have the opportunity because you're on a much smaller scale to actually do that and reach out and be personal. And sometimes I always kind of get the impression we're afraid to do things that don't scale. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, or I am now, but I a couple of years ago, if you would have asked me about Gary Vaynerchuk, and someone would really be like, oh my God, too prosy. But he's come a fucking long way, I think.
Yeah.
And one of his favorite quotes is like, do shit that doesn't scale.
Yeah.
And like, yes, this is actually it, right? Like, reach out to people, be more human. Um, and then let's talk about your really interesting things, getting people what they want. So, how do we go about this? How do we figure out what people want, what people desire, which is often not what they need. So you have
Right.
to bridge that. Um, how do we go about this?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I think you make a really important distinction. What they want and what they need are very different things. Because, for example, let's say a family is shopping for, I don't know, it's winter here and I'm freezing cold.
Same.
So I'm
Yeah,
going to say like
same.
a generator. They're shopping for a generator. Maybe they have 3 kids and they're trying to figure out how they're going to pay for it. Maybe what they technically need is the cheapest option because that's what makes sense financially. But what they want is something that is compact, that's going to fit in a particular corner of their garage, that is not going to make tons of noise and potentially wake up the baby. That's what they want. It's not exactly what they need. And so if you're going to start this process, you need to start by getting into the mind of the person that you're trying to sell to. And how do you do that? Well, you got to get crystal freaking clear on who that person is. I will tell you, there is not a single entrepreneur that I've ever worked with who has not gone through that feast or famine stage where they're like, I will just work with anybody. I just want any job. I just want any design
Sure. I mean,
project,
if you're
any writing
starting out
project.
like that might doesn't smell, so I take it.
Exactly. But that only gets you so far. And that gets you into a trap of
It's a
being
slippery slope.
exactly. And you end up lowering your prices, lowering your standards, and then you're miserable and you burn out, which is
Yeah, and
not
those
why
shitty
you got
clients
into this
refer
work.
you their clients, their friends, which
Exactly.
are also shitty clients. So it's like, yeah, you're doomed.
Exactly. So, what I always tell people is start with this wave a magic wand scenario. Who would be your perfect, ideal client? Maybe you've worked with them before. Maybe they're the exact opposite of everyone you've worked with before because you're just tired of all that. Get very clear on who exactly you want to work with.
Yeah.
And then literally do this funky creative brain exercise where you go, okay, what is their day like? What do they do? What time do they wake up? How do they go about their day? Do they drive to work or do they work from home? How are they making decisions? Who are they working with? What do they wear to work? Is their dog barking in the corner while they're working, or are they in a really nice, calm, peaceful kind of situation? Do they work by themselves? Are they surrounded by their team? Are they on calls all day long? Are they answering emails?
How often do they pick up their phone? Like,
Yes, exactly. Bingo, exactly. All of those little details help you understand what is this person struggling with in their day to day? What do they enjoy? Where do they find relief? And I think a lot of people, they get intimidated by this process because they go, I'm trying to sell to this person. I don't understand them. I just want them to pick me. You know other people more than you think you do. We all have mirror neurons. We all have empathy. We all have sympathy. We also, unless you're, on the spectrum and dealing with autism or Asperger's or something like that, we all have some sense
yes.
of social understanding. You can feel when someone stands behind you in the grocery store line. You all have a sense of other people.
Yeah.
Use that. This is not some miracle gift that only a few people have. Everybody has this. And you need to go through this mental process of really understanding who you're trying to sell to and what they're struggling with, because it's going to shape everything else that you do in your business.
Yeah. I really like that approach. It's a bit different from, let's say, the classic persona exercise.
Yeah.
And it's really, it doesn't, I mean, there are a gazillion different exercises you can do. Maybe I'm gonna challenge this a bit, or are you gonna be like, oh, I actually haven't said that yet, which it's probably gonna be that one. My issue with all of that is it's a lot of times when clients do that, it's desk research, self-projected stuff that has nothing to do, let's be crass, with what people are actually going through. So I
Yes.
have so many clients who are like, yeah, I did that. I'm like, well, okay, how did you do it? How many people did
Exactly.
you talk to? Oh,
Exactly. That's a starting point.
Yeah. It's
Right.
actually also gotta talk to other people and
Exactly.
see, okay, what is actually their lived experience and what are they telling me about their day or their pains or
Exactly. So when I say literally just sit down, don't even do like desk research and go to the internet. Don't do that. Just literally sit at your desk and try to imagine, literally use your imagination that you haven't used since you were 8 years old, and try to put yourself in that person's shoes. That's a starting point. But then to your point, you're exactly right. You need to go talk to people. So just like I said at the beginning, where, I hopped on sales calls with potential clients and I just started mentioning my psych background. They're like, how did you get into this? And I mentioned that, and they perked up. Their eyes lit up. They got really interested. They got curious. That's me
it's
going.
So funny. Let's see. Oh, when I mentioned like what's your background? I'm like, I'm a sociologist. People go like, it's not like it's the.
Well, because I don't think people understand sociology the way that they understand psychology. And
I know,
psychology is kind of like this like sexy, mysterious, like, ooh, are you going to read my mind kind of thing, even though it's not like, it's not like that.
But you can pretend
people are,
like I have this crystal ball. It's like,
and people are fascinated by it. And so, but my point in saying that is I did a exercise in my head and then I tested out what I thought might click. I tested it. And then you have these conversations with people and you just please literally just ask, what are you struggling with? When you are talking to a prospect, just say, what are you struggling with? And go into this conversation. Don't have a scripted list of questions or talking points. Just literally sit with them and try to learn about the problems that they're dealing with, because you're going to pick up on so much language, like the exact words that they're using, which can go on your website or in your proposal.
Copy library.
Yep, exactly. You will pick up on things that you didn't even realize were problems. You will touch on kind of surface level things that you probably identified were problems, but then you can ask deeper questions like, well, if that problem were solved for you, what would that do for you in your business? And then you can get to what do they really want? Because by doing that mental exercise, you probably figure out what they need, but here's where you really dig into what they want. And that is priceless. So that mental imagination exercise, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Then you have to go out and test and iterate and dive a little deeper by talking to real people. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, oh, I'm so afraid to talk on the phone. Well, suck it up, honey. You got to get over it, because everyone's just human. And when you realize that you're just talking to other humans, and if what's the worst thing that happens? They don't buy from you. Well, then you're in the exact same position that you were in before you talked to them. So you really have nothing to lose and so much to learn.
I love this. Yes. And it's really, I love that. Yeah. That you have nothing to lose. And also it's really, that's where both our backgrounds come in. Go out and actually test this. And we're not saying ask 1,000 people, because whatever, like we're not doing quantitative data analysis here.
Right.
You gotta, I'd say you gotta have 4 to 6 people, kind of like a focus group of 4 to 6 clients. Do 4 to 6 calls. That's already, you already will see patterns emerging of people having similar needs, similar wants, using similar words. You'll already see clusters and patterns and structures, and you'll be like, whoa. And of course, you can do 12. At one point, it's probably not going to help much anymore. But really, just do 4 to 6 and see.
Exactly. And if it feels a bit intimidating, one, you can start with clients you already have, who you have a good relationship with. That's a great starting point, as long as those are clients who you would like more of. The other part is go out and ask peers, mentors, people who feel closer to you and less intimidating than prospects. Ask them about their experience. What have they learned? You can do these things gradually to start getting comfortable with doing this real proactive research in your business, but there's really no excuse. And the value you're going to get out of talking to existing clients, colleagues, and potential clients is immeasurable. If you do this, and to your point, if you just have 4 to 6 conversations, you will learn so much that you can apply in your business, and it will catapult you ahead leaps and bounds than if you just kind of stayed in this like, oh, I'm going to apply for this thing on this job board, and oh, I hope this client picks me,
Yeah,
but
someone
never
posted in
really
a
having
Facebook group.
exactly, but never really having these investigative conversations.
Yes. And right, and let's circle back and to, I mean, if you ask the question in a call and be like, okay, what do you need? It sometimes I feel it's hard for some people will not be able to articulate what they really need.
Yep.
So it's helpful, I feel, if you have a basic understanding of what our needs, how our needs differ from wants or desires. And I mean, we all, when we talk of needs, I'm sure, like everyone, I'm sure almost everyone, I'm sure, I'm saying everyone who listens to this podcast has heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I mean, it's psychology 101. At one point you heard it, right? If you are not familiar with it, let's see if I can recite it on top of my head. You have, it's a pyramid. The bottom layers, the basic needs are physiological needs: food, water, warmth, rest; safety needs, security, safety. Then you have psychological needs: belongingness, relationships, community. Then you have like everything that's to do with reputation, esteem, prestige, accomplishment. And the top is kind of like self-fulfillment, self-actualization, achieving your like full potential, your full creative potential, and so on.
Yep.
Is that right, Miss Psychologist?
Yes, you got
Okay.
it. You got it real well.
Woohoo!
Yes. And you can use this in a number of different ways. So, when we think about, okay, let's say, so I'm just going to use myself as an example.
Yeah.
Freelance writer, I am not providing a roof over your head. I am not providing food. I am not providing safety. I'm not providing belonging or love.
Well, maybe you are providing safety.
Exactly. And that's where you need to get into the nitty-gritty of what do these things. So this hierarchy of needs, it was designed at a time when humans were still looked at in a very animalistic sort of way. We're still looked at as having to survive. We have to get by. We have to make sure we have enough food on the table.
Water is important than
yes.
food, and because we can sustain longer without food and water.
Exactly. That loaf of bread is going to make little Johnny strong, and then he's going to be able to survive the polio, world that's, I don't know, I'm making shit up at this point.
Yeah.
But
no, but
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's certainly from a different time than what we currently in the situation for it. Yeah.
And so for some people, survival is still very much at the forefront of their minds. And when I talk about copywriting that I'm doing for clients, I'm thinking about who are my clients talking to. Let's say we're doing copywriting for McDonald's. They could very well be speaking to people who are just trying to survive in this world. They're trying to make their dollars go as far as possible. Yeah. Can they get a full meal for their child for $2.50? Yes, we might speak to that for McDonald's because of who they're talking to population wise. Yeah. But once people are no longer worried about survival, then they move on to worrying about things like safety, belonging, feeling understood, feeling heard, these more social dynamics. Now, things like safety, that doesn't mean, do I have a safe place to hide when the tiger comes running at me? It actually means, can you keep the lights of your business on? Are you able to pay the bills? Are you saving enough money in your business compared to what you're spending? That's where you, as the service provider, can help your client, because ultimately their goal is to run a lucrative, profitable business. You very much come into play in that safety layer. Now, that's where they're going to make a logical buying decision based on is this fulfilling what I need? And will it cost me a reasonable amount as opposed to an exorbitant amount? But what's going to differ between the photographer or the copywriter who charges $500 versus the other copywriter or photographer who charges $500? That's where this sense of belonging and being understood comes into play. And if you're not afraid to have conversations, if you're not afraid to talk to your client, and I always make it a point to try and make the people that I'm talking to on my sales calls, I try to make them laugh. If I can make them laugh, their guard comes down, they
That's
feel
also my
safe.
secret thing.
Yeah, they feel comfortable. They feel like, oh, okay, I can just be myself. I don't have to have this business
but this
persona
only works
on.
because this is you. If this would be like a trick, it would not work.
Right, exactly.
Right. So this is not like to say, oh, you should always use humor in your sales calls. Well,
if it's phony and forced, it's not going to work.
No. If it's naturally who you are, and even if it's like the dark kind, like this is really me, this is my jam, then bring it, and it will be authentic, and people will love you for it.
Exactly.
Or there are people who are like, no, but then it's okay because you do not want to work with those people because that's not going to work out in the long run.
Exactly. And that's the thing is I do that because I want to have pretty much all of my clients are friends at this point. I have worked with them so much. I mean, they text me, we call, we're just so casual. And I want those kinds of relationships with my clients. So I make it a point to be the way that I want us to be in 6 months. I am that way on that very first sales call. And this speaks to that belonging and connection layer of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which speaks to the emotional side of buying. When people buy, yes, logic plays a role, but I would say it's about 25%. Everything else is emotional.
I'd say, I think I've read once it's like 15% or so. Like, I feel we overplay how logical we think about buying. Like, like you do not. Even if you think like, oh, but I like look at prices and like maybe you do and you're brilliant, that's you, perfect. But like there's so much data that shows that if you're standing at the point of purchase, you're looking like, oh, this packaging is super shiny, I'm gonna buy this product. You're like, that's not logical.
Exactly. You know, right before this call, I was opening up a package. One of my clients from Australia sent me a couple bottles of wine. And the first thing that I look at is the label. Anytime you're buying a bottle of wine, you're looking at, oh, this looks like a cool label. I think I might like to have this on my kitchen counter for the next few days or hours, depending on how you're feeling.
Good design and beauty fulfills a need too.
Exactly. It makes you feel good. You like to look at it. So,
or it shows that whenever someone is come visiting you, like, oh, she got good taste. She has the nice fancy bottles on the kitchen counter.
Exactly. And all of that has to do with social perception, our feeling of belonging, our feeling of connection and being understood.
Glided into the next layer of Maslow's pyramid, prestige and feeling of accomplishment. How others see you, right? That's kind of like I suppose the next reason why people buy things, right? Because, oh, if I wear, I mean, that's where branding comes in, right? Where brands have ridiculous markup because, oh, if I wear a Gucci bag, that tells XYZ something about me, the carrier of a Gucci bag. Or I drive a Tesla, that means you're a dick. But I'm kidding. But like, you got it, right? Like, I mean, that's where we buy expensive Apple products because we can tell ourselves, oh, we're fancy. We're like designs and like minimal chic. And we can tell that to others too, and be recognized for it.
And so how does this come into play in your selling process in your business? So many creative entrepreneurs think, well, if I charge too much, they're not going to buy from me. I need to lower my prices. I need to be lower than the competition who they're also getting bids from. No, that's not the case. You could charge, and I've done this before, you could charge 3 times as much as the competitor that they're considering. But if you make them feel good, if you make them feel like you see them, you understand their problems, and you have a very real solution. Perfect example. Earlier this morning, I was talking to another agency who actually wants us to do their content creation. And I'm talking to him about this exact thing that we're talking about now. What are you actually struggling with? Because what we
Yeah.
had thought it was and what we were talking about over email, it turned out that wasn't really it. And he
Mm,
goes, I'm the CEO. I'm supposed to be selling. And here I am rewriting content that my writers were supposed to write, but they're just not nailing it. And so I said, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense for you to outsource your content creation to me. Sounds like what your team needs is a brand messaging guide. If they're not capturing the voice of
mm,
your client and you're having to rewrite that because they're not nailing it, that's what you need. Don't
mhm.
triple your cost by outsourcing this. Just get one extra tool to bridge that gap between
And if it works,
you.
great. If not, we can still talk about copywriting.
Exactly, exactly. But that's a situation where I listened to what was his problem, and I, knowing about writing and knowing, having all of
Mhm.
these years of
Yeah, I've been
experience.
big in the business, and having seen like what is before and after copywriting, like before is brand
Right.
strategy, afterwards is like sales, like or marketing and sales, like kind of like, oh, actually, doesn't make sense.
Exactly. And if I tell him, so the alternative was he pays me like 5 figures per month to cover the writing for all of his clients, or he pays me a small one-time 4 figure fee to do the strategy, the brand voice guide, and do a little bit of training with his team one time. All of a sudden, it's not about the money. It's not about me trying to get as much as I can. It's about me literally being the solution provider for his
Mhm.
problem. He's going to save money. And now I'm going to have a super happy, loyal partner, client
Yeah.
who comes to me every time he needs something that's in my area of
Yes.
expertise. And that to me, that long game, that long relationship is way more worth it than me selling someone they don't actually need just because of the price tag. And now, in doing that and being honest with
Yes.
him, he
Yes.
trusts
Amen.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. Like you've built so much trust currency
exactly.
that they're gonna basically do what you want, right?
Exactly.
Like I mean, and I see it so often that mostly rooted, I say, in the scarcity mindset
Hmm.
that you're like, oh, okay, I we're either doing it because we want to have the money. It's easy money. We're just gonna sell it to client. He's an idiot. Like, well, yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do it for 3 months until the client realizes it's not gonna do anything. But
Right.
or we're like, or the other way, like, oh, okay, I know what the client needs. I gotta do that, but I'm actually not really skilled to do that, or I have no experience in doing it, but I'm just gonna try anyway. Like, whereas actually being here and like, look, listen, I don't think it's me and my services you need at this point. This is what I suggest you. I mean, if they're not listening and they go hire another copywriter,
Right.
that's
But then
fine.
that's not going to be a good client because they're seeing you as an order taker and not as a partner or a collaborator.
Yes. And I mean, the countless, I mean, I had it several times where people like, oh, this is how much you charge for a brand identity. Yeah, okay, that's out of my price range. Like, fair enough. That's cool. Whatever. Like, perfect. And then they, I don't know, they got someone else to do it. Um, no,
For cheaper
yeah, yeah, mostly,
and
and like
longer.
be like, I don't know, and be they got someone on Upwork to do it for,
Hmm. So it wasn't
and
as good.
yeah, and then I don't know, maybe 3 months later, I get an email with like really weird like Illustrator file and be like, hey, like, could you like clean this up or like, no, I cannot. Like, no, this is your mess. Go clean it up. Go ask someone else. Right?
Exactly.
Like, it's just, I mean, well, it's what it's going to be. But all the clients where I'm like, this is not what I do. But if you want, I can bring you in touch with the people who can do this.
Hmm.
Let's say copywriters. I mean, yes, I write taglines with clients when we have a spark moment, but I'm not
Hmm.
writing pages of copy. Not me, not interested. But if I know someone who would be great for the project, I will recommend them. Be like, hey, look, this is actually, you actually have to work to talk to Ray about it. I'll set you up. Those clients will be eternally grateful because there's a sea of copywriters and they
Hmm.
got a starting point to work at. And
Yep.
I don't know how I got countless of, I mean, I mostly grow through referrals.
Hmm.
So I got so many people from like, that one guy, he like, you told him that you're not a great fit and he really loved your honesty. And then he told me about it, but now I really need a branding person. So I'm here. I'm like, cool,
Exactly.
awesome.
Exactly. We all ultimately just want to have our needs met, our problems disappear, and we want to feel good, not stressed out.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you address what are people's problems, if you make them feel good and you genuinely connect with them because they're the type of person that you'd want to work with,
Mm.
then you can charge whatever you want, whatever you need to really run your business and feel like you're being paid an equitable rate for the energy that you're putting out.
Mm.
Everything flows from there. Selling is not about manipulating or persuading or convincing. It's about connecting and being that problem solver and
Yeah.
being the solution provider for what people need.
Yeah. And I feel like selling has always been done right if both parties walk away with the feeling of this was a good deal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter. Like I don't know. I always like the example. I had that big aha moment once. I was in Istanbul on a market, and I bought a scarf, and I mean I'm not a super skilled like Turkish bazaar salesperson, sales buyer.
Yeah.
Buyer. So it probably ripped me off. But I mean, I hassled a bit for the price, like how you should. And I was happy. It was a nice scarf. My mom was happy. I brought it to her. Like, so I walked away having made a good deal because I felt like, yeah, I love it. My mom's gonna love it. It was fun. All good. He walked away with like, oh, I made a lot of money. This is awesome. It was a win-win for both. That's how it should be. Both parties should walk
Exactly.
away feeling this was good.
Right. A lot of people go into, if you're the one being sold to, you go into conversations feeling like this person might try to get one over on me.
Oh, yeah.
But if you always look out for, am I getting what I need? And a lot of that thought process is actually very emotional and intuitive, it's not logical. If you go into those conversations thinking, I need to get what I need, and I'm happy for the other person to get what they need, then there is no buyer's remorse. There is no getting one over on each other. There is none of that ickiness that we tend to associate with selling. It's
Yes.
literally just two people helping each other out. One has skills, the other has money. Win-win.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it could be such a powerful reframe if you just like not call it a sales call, but I don't know, call it a need call, like or a need mapping call. You just gotta see and like, look, these are my needs. Can you meet those? Cool. If they overlap on most instances, then like the actual transaction, the actual sale is kind of like a logical consequence because hey, we're like having all our needs met. Why shouldn't we work together? Sure, there can
Right.
always be things, but if you really look at it like that, I think that's such a brilliant reframe of really like, and not, and as you've said, it's not about, oh, I'm on this call to make all my clients' needs met. It's actually like your both needs have to meet, like have to map, overlap, and like come together. I
Exactly. And
love this.
to your point, you need to be able to, first of all, you need to know what your needs are,
You
whether
gotta
that's
know, yes,
how.
you gotta know yourself. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's maybe it's how much you need to get paid for this job in order for it to be worth your while, or when you're going to start. Because if you start tomorrow, you're going to be stressed out and it's going to overlap with other
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's how few or how many meetings you have with the client, or when you need them to
Or
get
the
feedback back
form.
to
Do you
you.
have to be on a weekly call? Can you do Voxer? Do you
Exactly.
have times where you have to be available? Do you, I don't know, there are a gazillion ways of how you first have to be really clear about actually, do I want this?
Right. And then
Or
clients tend to be kind of like kids. where we think, oh, they don't want rules and structure, but actually they do. They need those guidelines to know how to behave. It's like if you get an invitation to a party and it doesn't tell you, is this a beach party, a black tie?
Ooh.
You have no idea. And so
Oh, the
you're walking in
worst.
and you're like, oh shit, I don't
Oh
know how
shit,
to
it
do.
was a
I'm going to be
costume
so
party. Oh
uncomfortable.
no.
Exactly. And you don't want to be uncomfortable. You want to know what the rules of engagement are. And so clients are the same way. So I always tell clients, hey, I take meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm off on Wednesdays. I do a lot of my creative work on the weekends. So you're going to get deliverables from me on Monday. I email you every Monday with a project status update. That's it. Those are my rules of engagement. Oh, and then I require payment up front. That's it. Those are my rules of engagement. And when they ask me, how do you work? How does this work? That's exactly what I tell them. And then all of a sudden, it's not, oh shit, this chick is putting rules and demands on us. No, it's, oh, okay, now we know. Now things are clear. If we need to negotiate, we can. But 9 times out of 10, they don't. And they're just like, okay, cool. Sounds good
Yeah,
to me. Now I know.
exactly.
That's
That's
all they
also
want is
my
to know.
experience. Yes.
Yeah.
That's also 100% my experience. And people also, I mean, sometimes it's not working out because they need you to be available on Wednesdays. Well, then that be it. So be it. Fair enough. Whatever. Right. But most of the times people are like, oh, yeah, cool. You're like, ooh. And you had this big of like dawn, like, oh my God, it's gonna be so, oh, what they gonna
Exactly.
tell? And you're projecting so much of your own insecurities onto this, where it's like, no, they want you to manage their expectations. Right?
Exactly.
It's nothing as worse as kind of like the uncertainty. You are the service provider. They come for you to have a need met. They come for your expertise. And honestly, I mean, if I would if I hired like a coach or a copywriter or someone, I'm actually expecting them to be like, you
Yeah.
know,
Give you
it's
structure.
not my job to do it for my client. Like, it's not. No, I said that wrong. It's not my client's job to do it for me. It's actually my responsibility to say these are the rules
Right.
of
And
the
what
game.
happens if you go hire a consultant and you go, so how does this work? And they go, oh, we can just do it however you want. You feel like, okay, you've never done this before. Now I don't trust you anymore. I'm going to go find someone who has a clear process that can walk me through it because I'm the one who doesn't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That's why I'm hiring
Yes.
you.
And I
So
want to
have the
reduce
structure.
uncertainty. I want to reduce
Exactly.
stress. I want to reduce friction. I just want to have like, this is what I want you to do. A, B, C, D. Good.
Yeah. And clients are coming to you wondering, what do you need from us to get the result that we need you to create? Whether that's designs, photography, writing, a website, whatever it is, they need you to tell them, how do we get to the best result in your experience?
Yes.
So
But that's
tell
also
them.
yes. But that also, again, requires that you need to know in which settings can you provide the best result.
Yes.
Right. And standing up for that, like when you're a website designer, I'm not going to start a damn thing until I have copy and I have like images. Before that, I'm not going to do a damn thing, because otherwise I'm just going to end up redoing it 5 times because it was a mess from the start. Or if you're a
Exactly.
copywriter, if I don't have like brand guidelines or brand voice guidelines, not going to take on a project because it could be I mean, if they can't brief me, I cannot produce my best work. So you
Exactly.
got to be honest to yourself and be like, okay, in which settings can I do my best and can actually deliver on the value I promised before.
Exactly. And that's really all selling is a matching up of needs. If you understand what your client needs and you do that initial research, you use that knowledge that you've gained in your copy, in your marketing, in your client acquisition process, and then you understand what you need and you can speak to that. Then when you have that initial call, ideally 80% of their decision has already been made because you've done your marketing and branding job properly. But on that call, it's just a matching up of what do you need? What problems are you struggling with? Okay, here's what I can offer you. But in order to do that, I need XYZ.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. Selling is just a matching of needs. I really feel this is a powerful reframe. For anyone listening in today, I was like, oh, I hate selling and I always feel so icky. I don't know. I always rather clean out my kitchen or my fridge, or instead of doing selling. Yeah, like this is amazing. Ray, thank you so much for dropping the knowledge bombs. Um, so tell me, where can people find you online? Where do you hang out? How can people work with you?
Yeah. So if you want to learn more about what I do in the marketing world, you can go to cornellcontentmarketing.com. And if you want to just learn more about what I do as a business mentor, or if you want to work with me in that capacity, you can go to chironconsulting.us. That's CHIRON consulting.
Perfect. And you also got a little something, and we're going to link it as well, of course, for anyone who wants to build a freelance business, or probably really a good resource for anyone who's starting to think of freelance business or is very early in their journey. Please tell me
Yes.
about it.
I have the complete guide to building a successful freelance business. And this ranges, I mean, this is something that you can literally have on your desktop, check it out every couple of months. Where are you in the process? But it guides you from figuring out what is your service all the way through pricing, getting clients, marketing, selling, all the way up to things like having a self-funded 401k, a self-funded health insurance plan, all of that.
Wow. This is really, really cool. I know like at least like a couple of courses charge a lot of money for this. So this is really cool. Thank you so much. We're obviously gonna, of course, I'm gonna link it all in the show notes. So Ray, before I let you go, I always have one last question for my guests, and this is going to be really interesting to hear your answer.
Uh-oh.
No, it's easy. What book are you currently reading?
The Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen
I
Lakhiani.
knew it's going to be good. Okay. I've never
I
heard of
am a
that.
huge Vishen Lakhiani fan. He's the founder of Mind Valley. He started out doing
Okay. I know Man
meditation.
Valley. Yes. Okay.
Yes. And I mean, he started out like
Oh,
living on a couch cushion in a corner of his friend's apartment in New York City to now he has one of the most sought after places of employment and just this amazing company that just teaches people how to live healthier, happier lives. And his book, The Code of the Extraordinary Mind, really helps you step out of this prescribed plan that society tends to put on us and helps you really figure out, what do you actually want? What do you actually need
like
to
ditching
live a
the
life that you
shoulds.
feel? Yes, exactly. Getting rid of
Ooh, I
all those
already love
shoulds.
it.
Yeah.
I really, really love it. I'm definitely gonna check this out. Wait, thank you. I feel like we gotta do this again sometime. It was such a blast having you here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise. This was fun. Thank you. I love nerding out on all this stuff. Thanks.